Jochen Rindt on his way to becoming Formula One world champion in 1970. His dashing style and confidence on the track had wowed the motorsports world, and the reigning champion at the time, Jackie Stewart, was no exception.
The driver I most worry about when I'm racing, and he's also one of my best friends.
After a slow start in Formula One, the young German-born racer had also won the grudging respect of his Lotus teammate, two-time world champion Graham Hill.
Yeah, he's too bloody good as a driver, you know.
Rindt's down-to-earth persona also captured the hearts of adoring fans across Europe. On and off the track, the young racing driver was acquiring the aura and style of a Hollywood movie star. On September 5th, 1970, Jochen Rindt got into his car for a training session at the Italian GP in Monza. He would not return. Helmut Zwickau was on the trackside back then in Monza as a reporter and as a friend of Jochen Rindt. He's still a true car enthusiast, especially old sports cars. Zwickau followed the career of his fellow Austrian from the outset, first as a newspaper reporter and then for television.
Jochen, what happened?
The engine died, unfortunately.
He was a charismatic figure. For me, he was like the James Dean of motor racing. The kind of driver Hollywood might have dreamt up.
For his adopted country, Austria, Jochen Rindt was the first really big sports star. Covering major sports events in the 1960s was a task that fell to Lucky Schmidleitner, a producer and director for Austrian television. Like Helmut Zwickau, Schmidleitner accompanied the rise of Jochen Rindt. He was witness to some of the ambitious young drivers' early breakthroughs.
We drove to Balocco, which is between Milan and Turin. That's where Alfa Romeo's test track was. Jochen only needed 10 laps to destroy the track record. That's how Jochen was.
Jochen Rindt was born in Mainz, Germany in 1942. His mother and father were killed in an Allied air raid, and he was brought up by his grandparents in the Austrian city of Graz. Having inherited his father's spice factory, Jochen did not struggle financially. His first car was a VW Beetle, which he'd drive in races with friends before he even had a driving license. And racing was what he dreamed of. He competed for the first time in 1961 in a Simca Montlery. Rindt was shaping up to be a hotshot with talent to spare.
How long will you need to get close to someone like Hill, or Rundle, or Clark?
If I do really well and have a lot of luck, maybe in 2 years' time, if I have the right car. But I might never make it. There might come a point where I can't go any further.
His first crash came in 1963 in a Formula Junior race on the Nürburgring. He was not seriously injured, but his confidence was badly shaken.
I took him down to the hospital in Adenau. Lying in his bed there, he said to me, "I'm not made for racing. That was a warning shot today, and I should quit."
But for Rindt, the thrill of speed was too much to resist. In 1964, he joined the Formula One circus, making his debut at the Austrian Grand Prix in Zeltweg, behind the wheel of a Brabham. Rindt fought his way up to 5th place before his steering broke. But team director John Cooper was mightily impressed by the rookie. And following a series of mistakes by the 61 world champion Phil Hill, Cooper decided to replace the American with Jochen Rindt.
Is driving a Formula One car much different from a lower racing class?
Each race just means more. Formula One means racing to be world champion, which is the ultimate prize.
It also meant risking one's life in pursuit of that prize. Rindt was determined to become world champion and started to work his way up the ranks. In the 1960s, Formula One drivers still had to top up their income by driving in other races. From sports cars to Formula 2, Rindt drove anything that had 4 wheels and pace, sometimes competing in 3 races a day. And still had time for drifting with his own Jaguar E-Type. Le Mans, 1965.
And the drama intensified at night as the pace barely slowed. Behind the wheel of one Ferrari, Jochen Rindt. And he used the nighttime to overtake one car after the next from 18th spot. By dawn, he was in 3rd, and then 2nd. Car number 21, piloted by Rindt and the American Gregory, took to the front. And here's the winning team. Gregory on the left and Rindt on the right.
There are more than 1 million photos in the archives of Ferdi Krähling. The accomplished German motorsports photographer had a special eye for Jochen Rindt. In 1965, that focus also turned to a young woman, Nina Lincoln, a Finnish model, and Jochen Rindt's fiancée.
A real head-turner, and not just for photographers. A very attractive woman, a model, always nicely styled.
In 1967, the couple tied the knot. In 1968, their daughter Natasha was born. By now, Jochen Rindt's passion for cars had grown beyond the racetrack. In 1965, he'd set up his very own motor show. His popularity drew plenty of big names. Rindt had also seen the financial potential involved.
People ask why I compete in races. I do it for 3 reasons. As a hobby, a sport, and a business. For me, it began as a hobby. In sporting terms, it means a serious physical challenge. And thank God, you can also earn money with it. The first race in the Deutschland Trophäe in Formula 2 has been overshadowed by a tragic accident. I ask you all now, please, to stand. Jim Clark, the 2-time world champion and winner of 25 Grand Prix, has died.
Back then, I often felt like a war reporter. In every 2nd or 3rd race, there was a fatality.
Racing is dangerous, that's obvious. And because it's dangerous, we're all afraid naturally. There are different levels of fear. Fear that can paralyze you, or fear that makes you aware how dangerous it is. You just have to deal with it. And that's how it is with racing drivers.
It's not only the drivers who have to find ways of coping with the fear and danger of Formula One races. Nina Rindt is interviewed again and again about how it feels to be the wife of a Formula One racing driver and what she's afraid of, as here on German television.
All concerns about you, of course. Yeah. Having an accident in the race, and how do I feel?
Jim Clark had died at the wheel of a Lotus. That team, founded by Colin Chapman, now needed a new driver, and the man they chose was Jochen Rindt.
He switched to Lotus. I remember us sitting in a bar in Vienna, and he said, At Lotus, I'll either become world champion or I'll die trying. He took that risk. Yes, it was a pact with the devil.
It's not about winning a Grand Prix, but becoming world champion. Okay, so I haven't won a Grand Prix yet, but that shouldn't be a problem.
The 1969 Spanish Grand Prix was a street circuit where the teams used high rear wings. The high downforce was meant to produce extremely fast cornering, but the technology was controversial. Rindt started from pole position and led the field until lap 20, when his rear wing collapsed, leaving him unable to control his car. Rindt hit the barriers at the same spot as his teammate Graham Hill, who crashed 11 laps earlier. Although Hill emerged unscathed, his car had remained on the side of the track. Rindt hit that wreckage at 200 kilometers per hour. The Austrian was fortunate to only sustain a broken nose and concussion.
The car was so destroyed it was hard to believe anyone had survived that. It was completely irresponsible to send the drivers out onto the track with that setup.
The wings are madness. They shouldn't be allowed on racing cars. But getting Chapman to see any sense is impossible.
Oh, Barcelona.
The crash of both cars in identical fashion put the spotlight on Lotus boss Colin Chapman and the tensions within the team.
Unwittingly exposed my drivers to dangers which they should not be expected.
I blamed him, and rightly so. He should have worked out that the wing would break, which it did do later.
Is Jochen a much more complicated person to get along than Jimmy was?
They are obviously very much different in character. Jimmy was sort of, shall we say, quieter and more introverted than Jochen. But they're both wonderful drivers and wonderful people to get on with.
How would you describe Colin Chapman's character?
He's a very difficult character. Of course he wants to win, but sometimes there's a difference between how he and I want to win, which is probably why we argue a lot.
But the Formula One show had to go on. Relations between Rindt and his boss remained frosty. Chapman had built the fastest car, and Rindt was the best driver. He often started from pole and posted the best lap times with his spectacular driving style. But the technical problems remained. And the questions were always the same.
What happened there?
The semi-axle broke. It's a universal joint and it just snapped.
These things keep happening to you. Are you maybe pushing the car too much?
If the semi-axle goes halfway down the straight when there's the least force, then it's got nothing to do with me.
At the season finale in the US Grand Prix in Watkins Glen, there were no such problems. Rindt finally took the prized checkered flag and responded in typically droll fashion.
Jochen Rindt's first Grand Prix win.
I didn't dare think I might win. Something's bound to go wrong. I'll run out of gas or lose a wheel or whatever.
But Rindt could now dare to believe. As the 1970 season progressed, the Lotus remained stable and Rindt was outstanding. The Monaco Grand Prix would be a tactical masterclass. With former champion Jack Brabham in the lead, Rindt edged closer, waiting to pounce on the slightest mistake.
And Brabham runs into the crash barriers, leaving the way clear for Jochen Rindt. That's the second Grand Prix win for the Austrian, who drove the race of his life today.
Jochen Rindt was the best driver, but it was at the wheel of a Lotus, put together by Colin Chapman.
My biggest fear is something breaking. I feel I'm good enough not to make any mistakes. But I'm not sure if I can control the car if something goes wrong with it.
Nina Rindt was constantly at trackside, such as here in Zandvoort on June 21, 1970, the Dutch Grand Prix. Jochen Rindt was again the fastest man and led the field. Then the ominous sight of black smoke. Another crash and the fear. Who was it? Is it bad? It was a young English driver, Piers Courage, whose car crashed and went up in flames.
The accident happened behind me. I saw the car in flames on my next lap. The entire area was on fire. After a crash like that, it's not easy to carry on concentrating.
But the race was completed, regardless of the death of their friend and colleague. Rindt came first and had difficulty fighting back the tears.
I've just lost a friend. A huge shock. I want to see racing be as safe as possible, and that the organizers make the track safer. They need to finally understand that this is essential for racing to continue.
Would you ask your wife that same question?
If you could have one wish, Nina, what would it be?
That you would stop racing.
But Rindt was moving closer to his dream. He went on to win the next 2 races as well. Ahead of the German Grand Prix, the drivers threatened a boycott, insisting that the Nürburgring was too dangerous. Jochen Rindt, as ever, did not mince his words, as he and his colleagues demanded a change of venue. Apparently, the Nürburgring was surprised by this agenda.
Correct. But it's the organizers' job to ensure the tracks are safe, not ours. We're basically now like the police, having to help out.
The race was moved to the Hockenheimring. In front of 120,000 spectators, Rindt, Jackie X and, in the early stages, Clay Regazzoni fought out a pulsating 3-way battle for victory.
3 laps to go, and now Jackie X is back in front. Jackie X first, Jochen Rindt in second.
One of the best races I've ever seen. The way he battled with Jackie X and Clay Regazzoni, the lead kept changing. It was an amazing race and a good clue as to who'd become world champion.
It was races like this that cemented Rindt's reputation. After 4 straight wins, he had a 20-point lead in the drivers' standings.
Jochen Rindt wins the German Grand Prix, increasing his championship tally to 45 points.
Rindt may have been brash behind the wheel, but he was no playboy. Away from the track, there were no scandals, no affairs, just Nina and their young daughter Natasha. But on the track, questions about driver safety and the risk of a fatal accident didn't go away. There are rumors going around that you'll retire if you're world champion this year. Is it true?
Better stick to facts, not rumors.
He really was thinking about stopping and all the risks.
August 16th, 1970, the Austrian Grand Prix. The crowds were massive. It seemed the whole country wanted to see their sporting hero.
Mr. Rindt, we're still on air.
The race at the Österreich Ring was the highlight of Rindt mania. He had the entire country behind him.
I'm convinced that if you beat the Ferraris in Monza, the crowd there will applaud you.
Let's hope so. But first, I have to win. That's the problem.
The next stop on his quest to take the Formula One crown was Monza, Italy, on September 5th, 1970. Rindt stood a good chance of stealing the show from the Ferraris on their home turf. He had plenty of fans here too, due to his personal and driving style.
Practice has been underway here at Monza since noon for Sunday's 41st Gran Premio Italia.
Waiting in the pit lane at Lotus, Nina and Jochen Rindt. He was looking to set a good lap time and check what the track was looking like, while finding the time to report on Austrian television.
Monza's known as a very fast circuit. Using the slipstream is vital, which is why most cars are driving without wings.
It was just really loud, because practice had already started.
The turbine-powered car is very promising, but I don't think it's ready for a world championship yet.
I said it was too loud, and he said it doesn't matter. I'll just do a couple of laps, and then we'll try again. I was the last person to talk to him.
Suddenly it all went quiet, and that's always a bad sign that something had happened.
I was running over to the scene of the accident with a cameraman. Along the way, I found Nina Rindt. She was already crying.
It then became clear that he hadn't survived.
Once we arrived, we started shooting. His foot had been practically torn off under the guardrail. As he braked, the car had swerved left at a right angle. Awful.
His injuries were fatal. He went under the rail, which tore his leg off. The steering wheel rammed into his chest, and that was it.
Jochen Rindt passed away at the Monza Medical Center. His fellow drivers were shocked at what had happened and how. Dennis Hume was in the car directly behind the Austrian.
It just went to the right, and then it turned to the left, and turned out to the right again, and then suddenly just went very quickly left into the guardrail, onto the grass, and then into the guardrail.
We worked out pretty fast that his brake shaft had broken. It was a revolutionary technical feature that only Lotus had. It was a risky construction.
Once more, the Lotus team had seen its best driver die on the track. While Colin Chapman left Monza in a hurry, the Italian authorities opened an investigation and then a trial. 6 years later, Chapman was cleared of all criminal charges.
First of all, I think Jochen was perhaps my greatest friend in motor racing. I perhaps feel sadder at this moment than I've ever done before any race. He was a truly great driver.
6 days after the crash, Jochen Rindt was buried in Graz, Austria. He was just 28 years old. No one that 1970s season beat his points lead. Later that year, his widow Nina was presented the driver's trophy by Jackie Stewart. Jochen Rindt was world champion.